May 2nd. Champions collide. David Benavidez, undefeated, unrelenting. Zurdo Ramirez, powerful, punishing.
And there's a left hook!
Can the Mexican monster snatch the crown from the unified cruiserweight king? Plus, Resendiz faces Munguia for the super middleweight title. Mexican warriors battle for the belts Cinco de Mayo weekend.
Are you ready?
Benavidez Zurdo plus Resendiz Munguia, live on PBC Pay-Per-View.
Welcome to a special Cinco de Mayo edition of PBC Opening Bell, Benavidez versus Zurdo. We are here at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, live on PBC YouTube for Fight Week. I'm your host, Treasure Wilson, and I'm joined by the host of Talk with Flea and co-host of It Is What It Is, Cameron Giles, along with Emmy Award-winning ESPN sports reporter, Bernardo Osuna.
It's good, man.
Doing well by yourself.
Good to
Pleasure
see you.
to see you.
You already.
Treasure.
Hey, we are just hours away from the Super Bowl of boxing, Cinco de Mayo weekend, a PBC pay-per-view on Prime Video with the return of the Mexican monster, David Benavidez. Benavidez moves up to challenge unified cruiserweight world champion Gilberto Zurdo Ramírez. And it takes place at the T-Mobile Arena, and tickets are available on AXS.com. So y'all, this is one special event, and this is going to be one special show. So TGB promoter Tom Brown is going to break down all the fight action. Then a little later in the show, we'll talk to two Mexican boxing legends, the CEO of Golden Boy Promotions, Oscar De La Hoya, and the only Mexican boxer who can argue that he is greater than Oscar, the icon himself, Julio Cesar Chavez. But let me bring in Cam and Bernardo first. Yes. So guys, Cinco de Mayo brings back so many incredible fight memories, fight parties, maybe some fights. But what would you guys say was your favorite Cinco de Mayo moment?
For me, it's Floyd against Oscar. You know, there's a lot of talk leading up to that fight. Oscar was on top of the game. Floyd was coming up. And arguably, Floyd won that fight, but arguably, a lot of people say Oscar was supposed to win that fight, but, you know, Oscar came out in the Floyd came out in the Mexican hat and everything else, and there was a lot of tension building up to the fight. So that was probably my favorite Cinco de Mayo moment.
Hey, what about you?
Look, and that was the beginning of Cinco de Mayweather.
Right.
Until Canelo finally was able to take the date back. But, you know, Floyd Mayweather made Cinco de Mayo his fight weekend. For me, you can't go wrong with a fight like Diego Corrales against Jose Luis Castillo. I mean, when you can be mentioned among the great fights of all time, along the lines of Hagler Hearns and Ali Frazier and all the legends, I think that really is what stood out to me about that fight. You know, 2005, they're going at it. Jose Luis Castillo, who gave Floyd one of his toughest fights, you know, was in control until the 10th round, drops Chico Corrales, he spits out the mouthpiece, drops him again, and just has, you know, with Joe Goosen, who's going to be on the call with us on Saturday night, he has a wherewithal to spit out the mouthpiece again. It cost him a point. Could have cost him the fight had he not had one of the greatest comebacks ever in the history of boxing. And then he just stops Jose Luis Castillo in one of the most memorable, exhilarating fights that we've seen in this generation.
Let me ask you something about that fight, because that's one of my favorite fights as well. Being that he got knocked down so many times, and he didn't knock down Castillo, do you think the referee prematurely stopped that fight, or you think it was a fair stoppage?
I think it was a fair stoppage.
Okay.
When you look at the reaction from Jose Luis Castillo, look, they had taken everything out from one another. I'd venture to say that neither guy was the same after that. Right. And I think the referee stepped in at just the right time because Castillo was helpless against the ropes. Right. I understand, because originally I was like, yo, you just gave the other guy a shot. Why not give him a chance to go out on his shield? Right. But he would have been severely damaged had the referee not stepped in.
Got you.
Yeah. So with it being Cinco de Mayo weekend, we already know, even just aside from the fight itself, the stakes are so high, right? So do you guys think Benavidez and Zurdo have what it takes to carry that torch and headline this weekend?
I do believe that it's important because, look, I have the dates, and you know, when I look at Chavez, he headlined in 1993, 1994, Cinco de Mayo. beating Frankie Randall the second time. Only 2 times in his career that he headlined on Cinco de Mayo. Oscar did it 5 times. He went 4-1. The only loss was to Floyd Mayweather. Then Manny Pacquiao headlined 3 times. He had the victory and that draw against Juan Manuel Marquez, which was another one of the greatest fights ever on Cinco de Mayo weekend. And then Floyd headlined 6 times. And now Canelo's headlined 9 times on Cinco de Mayo. So he really has made this fight date his until he says he's not fighting. And he says he's not fighting this time around due to health reasons. Guess what? That's when the opportunities come up. You've got a pound-for-pound fighter, top 5, and David Benavidez, who's really been climbing the ranks and fighting the best out there, daring to be great, moving up 25 pounds at cruiserweight. This is an opportunity for the world to finally see. If Canelo doesn't want to give him the opportunity, guess what? I'm going to make my own opportunity. And if he wins, he makes history. But it's not going to be easy, Cam.
No, I'm piggybacking exactly off what you said, chasing Canelo. Because we all know Canelo's the standard, but if Canelo doesn't fight, what is Benavidez supposed to do? We're thinking about Zurdo. He only has 1 loss. I think it's going to be a fabulous fight, and I think we could determine the answer to your question after Saturday.
Yeah, and then just to kind of add on to that, right, going back to the weekend, what are some other things people should be looking forward to? Like, why do they need to tune in to this fight?
Oh, man, it's pride. Look, one of the things is when we look at Cinco de Mayo is great wars, right? And it doesn't matter the nationality. Like I said, Floyd took over the date. Why? Because he understood what it was to fight on this date and to get the Mexican fight fans to know him and respect him and to buy his fights. Whether it was to see him win or lose, he was like, I don't care, they're paying to see me fight. And he made it his business to fight on Cinco de Mayo. And I think when you look at the future of boxing and where it's going, we need that next star to take over. Canelo's at the twilight of his career. And when you look at this fight, look, Zurdo is no easy task. He's a natural cruiserweight now. He hasn't gotten knockouts at this weight class, but that should make David Benavidez think there's something about 200 pounds that's different. Because Zurdo was knocking out 68 fighters at 68 easily. At 75, he had a lot of good fights. The only one to outbox him was Dimitri Bivol. Did the same thing to Canelo Alvarez. Has done it to better be one of the best fighters pound for pound in the world. So when you look at what's at stake, for Zurdo, he could get into the top 10 pound for pound rankings with the victory himself.
Yeah, and it's pride. You know, of course we're here for the fight, but it isn't just in Vegas.
Right.
It's across the country, period. Everybody stops what they're doing on Cinco de Mayo, and this is going to be the main event of that day.
Yeah, definitely must-see TV. So the Cinco de Mayo tradition continues Saturday night with Benavidez versus Zurdo. We'll save our predictions for the end of the show, but we're going to pause right here, and we'll be right back with Mr. Tom Brown.
David Benavidez with the body punches, the uppercuts, combinations. 1, 2, 3, 4 punches from David Benavidez.
Right hand on the inside for Benavidez. He's holding and hitting. He's going with it apparently.
Oh yeah, one hand straight. You punch with that one hand. And is near for Yard, but Yard is, you know what, man? It looks like he's gonna go down swinging, bloody, bruised up, backing up, but still trying to punch him between the shots.
The Mexican monster, Chavez, Benavidez!
Our first guest is the president of TGB Promotions, Tom Brown. Tom, welcome back to the show. How are you doing?
Thank you very much.
Great to have you. Okay, so what do you enjoy most about Cinco de Mayo weekend in boxing?
Well, it's funny, you know, you guys were talking about that Chico Corrales fight, and you know, it meant so much to us because, like you said, my brother-in-law was his trainer. You know, it's one of those fights that we remember exactly where you were at the moment, you know, and our whole family was watching it, and it was just kind of a proud moment for Joe. You know, so that's one of the great ones. Now I'm going to give you one of the horrible ones, okay?
Okay.
I think Oscar will like this because we talked about it at a press conference for Barrios and Ryan Garcia, but it was 1995 when he knocked out Rafael Orellis in the second round. I was actually working the corner with Joe Orellis, and it was such a massive event. Oscar had been doing just huge numbers on HBO, and it was his first pay-per-view event. I think it was your first, right, Oscar? Yeah, it was his first, and you know, this was before social media and before the internet, and this fight was everywhere. You'd go in the grocery store, all the newspaper stands. It was huge. You know, and we sat in the dressing room. Oscar walked, and we got to walk second, and Joe locked the door and locked the commission. We thought we were going to freeze Oscar out there, you know, out at Caesar's Palace. And anyway, it didn't work. But that's one of my worst moments, okay?
And that was like the first time that Oscar fought a fighter where it was that Mexico against Mexican-American rivalry, because, you know, Rafa was born in La Yerbabuena, Jalisco, and played it up, and it was just, L.A., it was a civil war in L.A. You were either on Oscar's side or you were from the valley out there with Ruelas.
Simon, it was all.
Tom, when you look at David Benavidez, why do you think he could be the face of Mexican boxing?
Look, I think he's earned it, first of all, with his work ethic. And, you know, I read that story that Lance Pugmire did on Jose Benavidez Sr. and what this kid, look at, coming up in boxing at that young age, it's not like playing Little League Baseball and skinning your knee and crying like, home to your mom.
Right.
These guys are in the gym fighting at that age. And, you know, I actually saw it when he was, 13, 14, 15, over at the wild card when he was in the ring with James Toney, you know. So it's a whole different animal. You put the work in, all these fighters. You got to have respect for all of them that have done it this way, where they come up, you know, in a gym every day and grinding like that and giving up so much of their childhood and their lives to reach this goal. And he's done everything right. You can't say one fight that David Benavidez is in where you've sat there when it's gone to a decision, even the knockouts once he's knocked him out. You can't say, look, I was worried about the decision. Nothing's even been close. Maybe the first Craval fight, you know, but other than that, he's earned this.
What was the conversation like when you made this fight? How did you react to it, or did he want it? Like, what was that conversation like to jump 25 pounds and follow in the footsteps of a James Toney?
This wasn't anyone making. This was him demanding it. You know, this guy sat around as the interim champion all that time at 68, trying to get Canelo. He said, screw it. It went up to 75. You know, he wants Bivol. That's why you heard him today say how he wants to go back to 75. But look, we'll see how this fight goes. You know, I mean, this could be, like I said, a fight of the year candidate. And maybe we'll want to run it again. Let's see what happens Saturday night before we worry what he does next.
Yep. Tom, you always put together a great lineup. We're here for Benavidez, Zurdo. Besides that fight, what other fight should we be looking forward to?
Well, look at Munguia-Resendiz is going to be, it could be scary. You know, right. You talk about having a chance to be a show stealer. So that one's going to be great. Obviously, Duarte, you know. Listen, this whole card, you can't go wrong.
When you look at the Jaime Munguia against Resendiz fight, Armando coming off of the 2025 fight upset of the year, and on the other side you get Munguia, who was the victim of the upset of the year in his hometown. So it's two guys who have been on the opposite side, and both guys have a lot to prove, it seems like.
Yeah, they do, and you know, but the thing is, you know, Munguia's been there. You know, and he's been in the big fight, and this is Resendez's first real big opportunity. And, you know, people try to say maybe the Plant fight was, you know, just a fluke or something. But I said I think the Marcos Hernandez and Elijah Garcia fight might have been a fluke. And this is the real kid. And whenever a kid gets that belt strapped around their waist, they seem to just get a little bit better, you know. You train harder, you do things differently. And I've got a good feeling about Resendez on this fight Saturday night.
Cool. One more question for you, Tom. If David pulls the victory off, what do you see for him next?
Well, it's kind of like what I said. We got to see what happens first, because
right.
If it's a fight of the year candidate, you know, run it back. I mean, other than that, we'll sit down with his team. He's been pretty adamant all week about talking about going back to 75, and he still is the WBC 175-pound world champion. So, you know, that'll all be taken care of in the next few weeks. But other than that, I just think we've got a great fight Saturday night.
Let's stay focused on Saturday.
Yep.
Where's the business for David Benavidez? What's the best fight business-wise for his career, for the promoter, for his advancement as a star? Because come, you know, Saturday night, he comes out on top. He's got a lot to claim. Top 5 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. You know, give me the big names, but where does it go from your perspective?
It's like we said, just the history of Cinco de Mayo weekends. You know, you got Chavez, you got De La Hoya, you got Mayweather, you got Canelo, and now you got Benavidez, and he's going to call his own shots. You know, he's going to be the guy he's the money fight now. He's the guy they want to fight. So I don't think there's going to be any problem there on the business side.
Stars are made on Cinco de Mayo weekend.
Yes, they are. And we're saying we have to wait and see, and we will see what happens this Saturday, May 2nd. But that is Mr. Tom Brown, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break and be back with the one and only golden boy, Oscar De La Hoya.
Armando Toro Resendiz.
Garcia's a good counterpuncher on the inside, though. We've seen Sendi's sitting down on those power shots. Unorthodox. He lunged at the combination of Sendi's lands another combination. Now Sendi's finding his way. Mayweather to the ropes.
Beautiful overhand right once, not twice. Visually, that improvement to his game, and now he's commanding the...
Brad showing up. The crowd and Fuego. 10 seconds left in round 8.
We're going to see a replay of what happened towards the end of this round. Overhand right.
Armando Toro Resendiz.
He is the man who made Cinco de Mayo what it is today, a legend in the sport and the CEO of Golden Boy Promotions, Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar, how you feeling? How are you
Hi,
doing
good,
today?
good. Thank you, thank you. Oh, thank you for the...
Yes, great to have you.
The ovation.
Thank you. Please sit down.
Okay, Oscar, we've got a big pay-per-view on Saturday night. What excites you most about this year's Cinco de Mayo event?
I think everybody who's excited to come to Vegas on this weekend, you know, because you think about Cinco de Mayo, and people from all over the world come to Vegas to, you know, to feel the spirit of the Mexican festivities, the holidays, you know, drinking the beer, you know, having a great time listening to mariachi. Oh, and there's a fight. You know, so people are really excited about watching a great fight, a great event. And I'm very proud because, you know, with PBC, with Prime, with DAZN, with Golden Boy, we were able to collaborate and put an amazing card together. I mean, from top to bottom, it's gonna be fireworks. And look, we say this all the time. Oh, fight of the year and candidates and this and that. No, you take a look at the matchups, they are fire matchups. They are going to be wars, every single one. So even my lady Holly, she's like, are these fights going to be boring, or am I going to have to stay there for 3 hours? No, you're going to watch every single fight because you are going to be excited to watch all these fighters. So I'm excited. That means that Zurdo, Munguia, Rosendez, Benavidez, all those, Duarte, they know they have to perform on Cinco de Mayo weekend. It's such a pressure for these fighters, but at the same time, they're eager to just show the world what they're made of.
Right. Before you even went pro, you was an Olympic medalist, really a superstar. But you talk about the pressure of fighting on Cinco de Mayo. What kind of pressure comes with fighting on Cinco de Mayo?
Well, when everybody's expecting you to fight hard, when everybody's expecting you to see a war from you, you want to deliver. So it makes you train harder in the gym. It makes you run more miles. It makes you eat better. It makes you throw more punches. So you guarantee to yourself that when you step inside that ring on Saturday night, you're not only fighting for your country, for yourself, you're fighting for all those people who spent their hard-earned money watching it on pay-per-view or watching it live, watching it on closed circuit, whatever it might be. you're thinking about those fans. So that's where the pressure comes in. Like, you want to perform, you want to just give it your all for them.
Describe what it means to be a Mexican-American fighter fighting a fighter born in Mexico. You did it on Cinco de Mayo against Rafael Ruelas, against Yori Boy Campas. You also fought Julio Cesar Chavez. And look, at that point, some people hated you for it. Some people loved you for it. What is it about that Mexico versus Mexican-American rivalry?
Well, let's be real that everybody hated me. I mean, let's be real, obviously. But it's funny because when you're fighting on a date like Cinco de Mayo, right? And keep in mind that in Mexico, it's not a big holiday. In Mexico, it's like just another day, except for this little town in Puebla, you know, where the Mexicans beat the French, and it became this big old deal, right? But here in the U.S., I'm a gringo. I'm a pocho. That's what you know we call ourselves. You know, I'm not from here. I'm not from there. I'm like right split in the middle. You know, I'm not accepted in Mexico. I'm not accepted in the U.S. But I'm accepted in my little world. You know, so and that's the pocho. It's a gringo. So obviously, if you fight a Mexican fighter,
a legend.
I mean, especially if you're fighting Chavez. I mean, geez, I had to roll with like 10 bodyguards. It was that crazy. But it was fun because it gave you the opportunity to perform. It gave you the opportunity to show who you really are. So imagine the pressure of feeling, of having to face Chavez, who is like, I can't even describe who he is out there. He's everything.
Yeah.
And rightfully so, because he earned it, right? But imagine facing him and facing a whole country.
Even your family was like,
oh, my family, yeah, all my uncles, and hey, why'd you beat him and this and that? It's like, hey, come on, I'm your nephew, dude, relax. But it wasn't pressure for me. It was the pressure of performing at my very best, which made me the very best.
Right, and I was going to piggyback off where he said, how deep down inside, when you're saying you're Fernando Vargas or you're getting booed, and you're saying, look, you're not a real Mexican. How does that make you prepare for a fight like that? And then how does it make you feel being a Mexican? American Mexican.
Yeah, it actually, they're just throwing fuel in the flame. That's all they're doing. If you know how to control that anger, you know, that energy, you become a dangerous man inside the ring. It's like, for instance, if Fernando Vargas or, you know, Julio Cesar Chavez, you know, if we didn't have that little rivalry, that little extra energy to take me over the top and train harder, then I probably would have gotten beat because I wasn't motivated. But the fact that they are Mexican, the fact that they are like putting me down, saying I'm the pocho and the gringo, it just gives you fuel and flame and just, you want to go out there and knock somebody's head off, you know? So that actually helped me in my career because I did face a lot of, you know, a lot of people really not understanding like where I'm coming from, you know?
But eventually you won them over. I mean, look, we saw you do it. And I think that's really what I look at David Benavidez in this fight, you know, because Zurdo Ramirez is who he is. He's born in Mazatlan. He lives a lot of times here in the U.S., trains out here with Julian Chua, but he's Mexican. And even when you go on social media or whatever, they're like, Benavidez, is he Mexican-American? Is he Ecuadorian? Whatever. Hey, it doesn't matter. When you choose, they say a Mexican chooses where he's from. Not the other way around, right? And so for me, this is a great opportunity for David Benavidez to follow your path and say, doesn't matter where you're born, it's what you feel in your heart and how you fight.
No, I think one, you know, what worked for me was that I stuck to my guns on what I believed in. And I represented the U.S. in the Olympics. I won the gold medal proudly. But the fact that one of my aunts, one of my tias, gave me a Mexican flag to raise, you know, because she's proud of her heritage, being Mexican. She's like, mijo, bring up this flag and wave it next to the American flag, I felt proud, you know, and even though when I did face Mexican fighters, I was booed, I stuck to my guns and believed, you know, the message that I had was, hey, you know, I'm American, I'm proud of it, but I have Mexican roots. So if you stick with that and if you believe in it and you stick with it, then eventually people will respect you for it. And that's exactly what happened. And it took years and years. It probably still happens today. I get people telling me, you're not, you know, you have no Mexican in you or no blood, and you're a gringo, a pocho, you're American. That's fine. That's fine with me, but I am proud of my Mexican roots.
Right. You talked about the pressure of fighting on Cinco de Mayo, how you want to give the people a good show. Does that take away from the boxing aspect of it? Like, now we got to go in there and thump. When you go in there, is that what we're going to see with Zurdo and Benavidez? Forget feeling each other out. From round one, are the fireworks going to go?
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure.
Right.
For sure. I just there's a video circulating on social media of Benavidez and Zurdo sparring, you know, when they were younger. And boy, they're going at it. They are going, if you can check it out, they are going at it. So that's just sparring. Imagine the real fight. Look, the fact that Benavidez and Zurdo are not really going at each other, they're not, you know, getting into each other's face and the pushing and this and that. Well, guess what? The best fights we see inside the ring is when these fighters are cordial to each other outside the ring. You are going to see some fireworks. I mean, the fact, look, Benavidez is moving up 25 pounds to face Zurdo Benavidez, who's been in that weight class for a long time. So that power, that precision, that timing of his punches, I mean, Benavidez throws a lot of punches and bunches. So I think this fight here stylistically calls for a fire fight. It really does, because Benavidez is a machine, but Zurdo is a calculated machine. That's going to make the big difference.
See, I hope everyone's taking notes here, because you dropped a lot of gems. Even just talking about the mentality, like when you felt like people were against you and there was a lot of hate, you used it to fuel you. So when looking at Benavidez and Zurdo going into this fight, what should their mentality be?
Yeah, it's interesting, because Benavidez is you know, considered not the Mexican, right? He's considered the pocho like me. And so it's crazy, because Zurdo is the quiet one. You know, he's stealth. He's just like under the radar. And he feels a little disrespected. So then the fuel with him is like at the all-time high. So Benavidez as well is, you know, like, hey, I got to prove myself here in Cinco de Mayo and steal the date away from Canelo and this and that. So both fighters are motivated. Both fighters are, they've had the fuel, you know, on them for a while. And so in the gym, I can tell you for 100%, they are ready, they are prepared, they're elevated, and they're going to show it on Saturday night.
All right, so you mentioned Canelo. You promoted a lot of his early career, taking him to the top, taking him to world championships. And both of these guys have been chasing Canelo forever. Zurdo, when he was still at 168, wanted Canelo to move up. But Zurdo really moved up fast because he's a big guy.
Sure.
Benavidez, you know, he was the mandatory, was champion. Why did those fights never happen, Oscar? Take us into the negotiation room of why those fights didn't happen.
I strongly believe that, and I think that's what's wrong with boxing today. You know, I went up to the Senate a week ago, I believe it was, to defend the Muhammad Ali Act. First of all, it was like walking into a buzzsaw. I mean, I've never felt so, I don't know, the politics there was just not for me, you know. And so we go in there to try and protect the Muhammad Ali Act, and people, the politicians are asking me, well, you know, boxing is broken, and why can't we fix this, and why can we fix that? And I'm thinking to my head, well, it's not the sport that's broken because us promoters, managers, everybody involved in boxing, we want to make those big fights happen. But when you're a fighter that does not want to fight the top guys, then that's the problem. The fighters not having literally the balls to go up there and fight the toughest challenges. Because maybe you might be protecting your O, maybe you're never scared, but you just don't want to face certain fighters. And I believe, and people, we've heard it over and over and over again, Benavidez calling out Canelo. Why didn't Canelo want to fight Benavidez? You have to ask that to Canelo. I have my answer.
Well, what is it? You were trying to negotiate. You were trying to make that fight, right?
We couldn't get him to the table at all. Excuse after excuse. I mean, come on. Benavidez was chasing you for so long. Zurdo was chasing you for so long. But at the same time, Benavidez and Zurdo were the top guys for Canelo to fight. He didn't want to. That's the bottom line. There's nothing else I can say about it.
Gotcha. Let me get you one more question. We know you promote Zurdo. Why do you think he could be the face of the Mexican boxing society right now?
I think it all depends on his performance. You know, people want to see excitement. People want to see a fight. You know, they don't want to see 5 punches thrown in a round. They don't want to see it's beautiful to watch. Don't get me wrong. Now that I'm older, now that I'm seeing the game from the outside, like I respect Mayweather dearly because of what he did and what he accomplished. It's a different style. But people today, the kids today who are watching, the audience is totally different. They want to see action. And so if Zurdo beats Benavidez, you know it was a fight, because Benavidez is not going to go down just like that. He's going to go down in his shield. So I believe that Zurdo Ramirez winning this fight can take him over the top, and guess what? His next fight's going to be that much bigger, and he'll be a hero in Mexico.
So when you say kind of viewing it from the outside, I want to go back more into kind of your thought process when you watch these things and kind of really passing down the torch. Is this more so bittersweet, or it's just exciting because you know what the weekend entails?
No, it's exciting. Hands down, it's exciting. Every fight I promote, every fighter I promote, it's just exciting. I love boxing. Yeah. I mean, this boxing gave me everything. Boxing, was my savior. Boxing was my weakness. Boxing was my everything. Boxing, I wish it wasn't around. I mean, boxing's everything to me. It's my life. So when I'm part of a big fight, when I'm part of a big event like this, it's I just can't help to wait for Saturday night, that first bell to ring, and just see some great action.
Yeah. See, it's deeper than just the fights, and that's what makes the weekend so exciting. Yeah. So we're going to take a short break here.
And the beer is that much colder.
See? See, you see where he's at. We already know how it's going to get. So we're going to take a short break here. When we return, Julio Cesar Chavez will join Oscar. We'll be right back.
Boxing is a sport that's never been shy to utilize race and ethnicity to create a theatrical spectacle.
In the past 50 years, no professional boxer has begun a career and sustained unbeaten success for as long as has Julio Cesar Chavez.
Popes, presidents, drug lords, fighters respect him, fans adore him.
Chavez era el hombre del pueblo, del barrio, comiendo lo que comen los mexicanos, escuchando la música que escuchan los mexicanos y boxeando como mexicano.
Siempre tuve el cariño, el respaldo de todo México.
Julio was the star of stars below the heavyweight division until Oscar De La Hoya came along.
Still the undefeated champion of the world, the Golden Boy.
Look at this. Where have you ever seen
in the sport of boxing. A good-looking kid, so articulate.
The love that I received in my country here was incredible.
I'm representing East Los Angeles. I'm representing Latin Americans. I'm representing Mexicans.
It wasn't until the Chavez fight that people started questioning and people started saying he's not a real Mexican.
There was a huge crowd. Oscar got noticeably booed when Chavez turned to somebody and said, I've never been booed in my hometown.
Everywhere I would go, he's gonna kick your ass. He's gonna beat you. He's our hero.
He had gotten a letter from the president of Mexico. He better not wear the Mexican flag on his trunks.
Oscar bore a bunch of that attitude of not being Mexican enough.
La gente que vive en Estados Unidos, mexicana, es increíble cómo te arropan, cómo te quieren.
At the time, we didn't know they were cartel, and they threatened, if you beat them, something's gonna happen.
I don't think boxing's ever captured that excitement for us like this fight.
It was like the world was telling us there's one way to be Mexican, Oscar's way or the Julio way.
Me tenía miedo. Me tenía miedo porque yo miraba sus ojos.
Deep down inside, I was like, I'm gonna prove to all these Mexicans that I'm Mexican enough.
We are joined with Julio Cesar Chavez, and what a lineup we have here. So, Julio, your battles with Oscar were so highly publicized. How long after the second fight did the tension start to fade?
¿Qué tanto después de la segunda pelea con Oscar bajó la tensión entre ustedes dos? When he stopped counting his money, cuando dejaste contar el dinero.
Después de la segunda pelea.
Sí, ¿cuánto tiempo hasta que se hicieran cuates?
Fíjate que Oscar como que me tenía mucho respeto, ¿me entiendes?
Oscar was very respectful.
Siempre me tuvo mucho respeto. Siempre nos llevamos bien.
We always got along.
No hubo ninguna confrontación, ¿va, Oscar?
There was never a confrontation between them.
Después ya nos hicimos amigos.
And then we became friends.
Nomás cuando me tumbaste que tenía 15 años.
Only when he dropped him when he was 15 years old in sparring.
Después se la manó el cabrón, ¿me entiendes?
And then he got me back.
We all know that Oscar was very popular with the ladies. He's the golden boy. Did that make you want to beat him up even more?
Sabemos que Oscar era muy popular con las damas, que muy carita, pero eso.
Was he a pretty boy?
¿Te dieron más ganas de darle duro?
Sí, era padrote, estaba guapo el cabrón.
Yeah, he was a good looking guy.
Yo no sé qué le pasó ahora, ¿me
I don't know
entiendes?
what the hell happened to him now.
Pero sí era, pues fue una, son épocas, ¿no? Son épocas totalmente. Yo estaba, pues no tan acabado en ese entonces, ¿no? Yo todavía tenía para poderle ganar a Oscar.
I thought I could still had enough to beat Oscar.
La verdad, bueno, hay que darle el reconocimiento a Oscar, la verdad, él era un peleadorazo, el cabrón, neta, muy joven, pero.
I gotta give him credit. You know, even as a young fighter, he was a hell of a fighter.
Pero, pues era difícil, ¿me entiendes? Yo sabía que era una pelea complicada, una pelea difícil, pero.
I expected a very tough fight. I knew it was going to be difficult.
Pero me ganó bien, la verdad, o sea, no hay que menospreciarlo, ¿no? Desafortunadamente, pues yo tuve una cortada antes de la pelea, pero aún así, ¿me entiendes? Creo que hubiera sido una pelea dura, no sé si con la cortada yo a lo mejor le hubiera dado mucho mejor pelea de la que la gente esperaba, ¿me entiendes? Pero, pues, ese fue mi karma, ¿me entiendes? Ese fue mi karma, ¿no? El pelear cortado, pero no le quito méritos a Oscar, ¿no? Porque él hizo, aún así, la verdad, lo sentí muy rápido el cabrón, no lo hallaba, ¿me entiendes? O sea, sentí su pegada, sentí su velocidad, su juventud, todo, ¿me entiendes? Él iba en ascenso, ¿me entiendes? Y lo principal es que yo, pues, le pasé la estafeta al canijo, ¿no? ¿Me entiendes? O sea, y creo que se la dejé en buenas manos, ¿no? Porque la carrera de Oscar, pues después todo lo que logró es increíble, ¿me entiendes? Hay que
Gracias.
hay que valorarlo, la verdad, con todo respeto, ¿no?
He says, look, I'm not taking anything away from Oscar's victory because I think, even had I not had the cut coming into the fight, he would have, may have been more competitive, but look, he was young, he was fast, he was strong. I felt all of that. He's a very skilled fighter.
And better looking.
And sometimes, not than me, but no. And so he says, but at the end of the day, we have to take into account what that night meant for boxing and the fact that I did pass the torch to Oscar De La Hoya, and I left it in great hands because if you look at his Hall of Fame career, what he's been able to accomplish inside and outside the ring, I passed the torch, and it was in great hands.
You started your career 87-0. How long did it take the Mexican fans to get behind you when you first started boxing?
Tu carrera invicto hasta 87, 80 tantas peleas.
90 peleas.
He says 90.
89 ganadas y un empate.
He said 89 victories and one draw
My
against
bad,
Bernal.
my bad. Pardon me, Knight.
Pero,
Pardon me.
¿qué tanto
My bad.
tiempo
Let me get it
duró?
right.
Get it right. Dice, está bien. Dice, no me vengas con el gancho. ¿Cuánto tiempo para que el público mexicano te aceptara y te convirtieras en el ídolo que eres hoy? ¿Cuándo lo sentiste que el público se te entregó?
Bueno, mira, yo cuando yo peleé por el campeonato mundial con Azabache Martínez, yo era prácticamente un desconocido. En Culiacán, realmente, pues sí, la gente me conocía, ¿no? Me conocían en Tijuana. Pero esa pelea fue algo, para mí, pues fue algo increíble, ¿no? Primeramente porque era el sueño mío ser campeón del mundo. Pero me llevo la sorpresa más grande de toda mi vida, ¿no? Al llegar a Culiacán, imagínate que del aeropuerto hasta tu casa, las calles inundadas de gente, vitoreándome, o sea, pues desde ahí, hasta cada una de las peleas, la gente, ¿me entiendes? Hasta cuando perdí con Oscar De La Hoya, fíjate, fue cosa también increíble, ¿me entiendes? Cuando perdí con Oscar, cuando perdí con Frankie Randall. Siempre tuve ese recibimiento, ¿me entiendes? A pesar de la derrota, ¿me entiendes? Gracias a Dios.
Look, he says, when I fought for my first world title against Azabache Martinez, I was a nobody. Nobody knew who I was. I was unknown. And people in my hometown of Culiacan knew me, and in Tijuana as well, but I was nobody. But I come home with the world title, and to my surprise, from the airport all the way to my house, it was like a parade lined with people. And from then, I knew that they were behind me. And even, it's great when you get it in victory, but when I lost to Oscar De La Hoya, when I lost to Frankie Randall, even when I lost, it was the same love from the fans. And that's really what has never failed me in my entire career.
Gotcha. One more question. When you look at David Benavidez or Zurdo, does it remind you of anybody that you fought in the past?
Cuando ves la pelea entre Zurdo Ramírez y David Benavidez, ¿te recuerda alguna pelea que tú hayas tenido en tu carrera?
Pues me recuerda la pelea que tuve con José Luis Ramírez, zurdo contra derecho. Veo una pelea, te doy mi opinión sobre la pelea de...
Sí, también.
De Benavidez. Y, pues mira, toda la gente piensa que Benavidez pues va a ganar fácil, ¿entiendes? Y yo no lo veo así, con todo respeto, la verdad. O sea, yo conozco al Zurdo Ramírez, conozco también a Benavidez, y mucha gente piensa que Benavidez va a trapear con el Zurdo Ramírez, y están muy equivocados, con todo respeto. Están menospreciando al Zurdo Ramírez. Si el Zurdo Ramírez, yo no puedo decir en qué condiciones está, pero supongo que está sumamente bien preparado para esta pelea. Esas 25 libras que va a subir el Benavidez, pues sí, efectivamente va a subir más fuerte, pero a la hora de la pelea, cuidado, porque creo que si el zurdo viene bien preparado y el zurdo sale con determinación, les va a sacar un susto,
Says, look, the fight that this Zurdo Ramirez and David Benavidez reminds me of is the fight that he had against Jose Luis Ramirez, a southpaw against an orthodox. But if you want me to get into the fight, he said people are underestimating Zurdo Ramirez. Those people who think that, the odds makers and people think he's going to come in here and mop the floor with Zurdo Ramirez are very mistaken, because David Benavidez is a great fighter. He's got speed, he's got power, but he's moving up 25 pounds, and that's going to be difficult. And especially if Zurdo Ramirez comes in, as I know he's going to come in because of the stakes. If he comes in well prepared and he knows and he is faithful to what he knows how to do, then he's going to really surprise a lot of people. 7 libras a ti te costaron contra Oscar De La Hoya. ¿Qué tan importante es el peso? It was only a 7-pound difference between Oscar and Julio when he moved up from 140 to welterweight. What's the difference? ¿Cómo se siente esa diferencia?
No, la verdad que pues cuando yo peleé con De La Hoya, pues yo, la verdad, yo no era un peso welter, ¿me entiendes? De La Hoya pues está alto el canijo, ¿me entiendes? Y en ese entonces estaba mamadito, ¿me entiendes? O sea, pero a la hora de la pelea yo pienso que De La Hoya, yo lo más que marqué, De La Hoya ahí está de acuerdo, yo pesé 141 libras, yo no pude pesar más. Y De La Hoya no, pues De La Hoya está alto, ¿me entiendes? O sea, a la hora de la pelea, pues sí, lógicamente sentí su peso, sentí nomás en el empujón, ¿me entiendes? O sea, me miraba chiquito yo al lado de La Hoya, ¿me entiendes? Entonces, sí, la verdad sí, pues sí es un beneficio a veces, pero también a veces es contradictorio, ¿no?
He says, look, when I fought Oscar De La Hoya, it was only a 7-pound difference, but if we're being honest, he was young, he was a natural welterweight, he was taller, and I only weighed 141 pounds. That's the most I ever hit on the scale, and from the first push, I felt the difference in terms of the strength that he has as a natural welterweight, and so that's the biggest difference, you know, the speed, the power, it's all there, but you really feel it on fight night, and that's what Benavidez is going to be up against, you know, a taller, longer fighter. He's like Oscar, was even buff at the time, had a six-pack and everything, so, you know, that's what he expects that may be the surprise for Benavidez and against Zurdo.
Okay, so with that, let's get into predictions from both of you. Oscar, we kind of already know who you're picking, but who do you choose for Saturday? Who do you think wins?
Well, look, let me break down the fight. Yes. I think Benavidez, and the odds might change after this. Benavidez throws a lot of punches and bunches, right? He's very active, and he doesn't throw a lot of power behind those punches, maybe 1 or 2 punches, but he'll throw 10, 15 punches with no power, right? All speed. Now, Zurdo, he has tons of power with a good chin. If Zurdo times him in between that onslaught of Benavidez, that buzzsaw, if he times him with 1 punch, that's all it takes. If he connects him in the chin, it might be lights out, because I believe we've seen Benavidez rocked a little bit, you know, by not too hard of a punch. Zurdo hits hard like a mule, so I'm obviously going with my guy, Zurdo, but it's going to be a great fight. I think it's going to be an action-packed fight, and I believe somebody's going to go down.
A knockout?
I believe a knockout.
Okay.
I believe a knockout. Either Benavidez overwhelms Zurdo with all those punches and referee stops it, or Zurdo lands that 1 punch, and that's all it takes is 1 punch to knock him out.
El pronóstico, Julio, Oscar dice que puede ser una pelea donde Benavidez arrasa con volumen al Zurdo, o puede ser un Zurdo Ramírez que con un solo golpe bien conectado al contragolpe puede acabar con David Benavidez. Para ti, ¿cuál es tu pronóstico, campeón?
No, yo siento que va a ser una pelea más dura de lo que Benavidez piensa para él. Creo que va a ser una decisión, pero no sé quién vaya a ganar, la verdad, con todo respeto. Que ganen mejor, ¿no? Porque los dos los conozco, pero sí, voy a apostar y luego les digo con quién.
He says, look, I think it's going to be a harder fight than most of you and even David Benavidez expects. You know, it's just one of those fights where it's tough to call. Both of them, I know them very well. And if you really want to know who I think is going to win, I can't tell you right now. And if you want to know who I would bet on, I can't tell you that either yet. So he's kind of hedging his bets right now.
Sí, yo siento que si el Zurdo Ramírez o sea, es un poco lento. Si fuera un poquito, si sale un poquito más rápido, más decidido, va a meter en problemas a Benavidez.
Like, I truly believe, says the champ, that if Zurdo Ramirez comes out decisively, if he comes out with better hand speed and is just dominant out there, he can really put David Benavidez in trouble.
Okay, so we're hearing it's going to be a tough fight, but that makes for a great fight. So you heard it here first from the biggest Mexican boxing legends, but Cam and Bernardo, it's time for you guys' predictions as well.
Pressure's on. Come on.
Right.
I can't go with somebody. Until the O goes, I'm going with the undefeated fighter, so I'm picking David Benavidez.
For me, I always like to wait until the weigh-in because I like to see how they look once they step down. And it shouldn't be a problem for David Benavidez. He says he's been on weight, but how's he going to look?
Yeah, it's 25 pounds. We're not going to ignore it. Yeah, it's a lot.
And then for Zurdo, 200 pounds is also like, he has to cut down. So I always like to reserve my observation to see what they look like, what their eyes look like, what their bodies look like on the scale. Look, there's going to be some Pillsbury Doughboy action at 200 pounds, but they're not going to look like these guys look now. But at the end of the day, I will see what they look like at the weigh-in, and then I'll make a better informed decision. But I expect a heck of a fight. I mean, look, both guys have so much at stake. It's pound for pound for number 5 right now, David Benavidez. And if Zurdo Ramirez can beat him, how do you keep him off that list?
Okay, so Cam and Bernardo, are we seeing a knockout? Because that was the discussion. Is that what we see?
The thing about it is we're not going to ignore the 25 pounds. It's hard to, you have problems. Julio just said it, how he felt when he fought Oscar, the natural power at 7 pounds. 27 pounds is hard to try and knock somebody out. I have to agree with Oscar. If it's going to be a knockout, it's going to be on Zurdo's part, not Benavidez. But I think Benavidez will win the fight because he throws a lot of punches and bunches.
And look, the reality is Zurdo hasn't been able to knock anybody out as a cruiserweight. Doesn't mean he hasn't looked great as a cruiserweight. It's just the guys are bigger. They take a better punch. They deliver a better punch. And the question here is, how is Benavidez going to deal with the weight? Because, look, you see it sometimes, even in the smaller weight classes, when it's a 4-pound jump from 22 to 26, guys not only lose power, but they lose their punch resistance. They also lose their speed. Now we're talking about 25. Is he going to be as fast? Is he going to be in the same condition physically? Is he going to be able to pour it on like he always has in his fights? And so there's a lot of question marks that David's going to have to answer, but it doesn't mean he's not prepared. It doesn't mean he's not going to step up and rise to the occasion, because that's the type of fighter he is, and that's what's at stake for him as well.
Okay, I've got one more question for all of you. It's Cinco de Mayo weekend. Who has more to prove?
A ver, Julio, es el 5 de mayo. ¿Quién tiene más por demostrar? ¿El campeón, que es el zurdo Ramírez, o el otro invicto, también campeón en otra división, que es David Benavidez?
No, yo creo en lo particular que Benavidez tiene que, pues es supuestamente el favorito, ¿no? Entonces creo que aquí el de la presión es el Benavidez. Aunque el Zurdo sea el campeón, pues tiene un poquito menos, digo, no que tenga un poquito menos prestigio, ¿no? sino que pues el favorito es Benavidez, ¿no? Entonces yo creo que aquí la presión está para Benavidez.
Look, the favorite on paper is David Benavidez, so I believe that the pressure is on Benavidez to come in here and perform. I'm not going to take away anything from the champion, but he's lesser known than David Benavidez, if we're being honest. But at the end of the day, the pressure falls on the man who's trying to make a statement, and that's David Benavidez.
Bueno, si quiere hacer la cara del boxeo, ¿no? Digo,
if he wants to be the face of boxing, got to prove it in the ring. For you, Oscar, who's got more to lose?
I think. Look, I think I'm gonna go outside the box and say the fans have something to prove.
Okay.
You know why? The fans, because Cinco de Mayo weekend, when me and Chavez fought, when I fought Relentless, when he fought in Cinco de Mayo, man, the fans were just electric. You couldn't find a beer bottle, okay, after the fight, because everybody just had a great time. They were gambling. They were just having a ball watching great fights. So this weekend, I think the pressure's on the fans. I mean, let's go. Let's show up. Let's celebrate Cinco de Mayo the way it should be.
Yeah, right on. Cam, then Bernardo.
More to prove, I'm going to go with Zurdo, because if you're just a boxing casual, you know David Benavidez, you're not that familiar with Zurdo. This is an opportunity for him to say, okay, you don't necessarily know me, get to know me. So this Saturday night, I think he has more to prove. Benavidez, if you're not that familiar with boxing, I'm talking about outside of Cinco de Mayo, just a casual, you're pretty familiar. He just said he's ranked number 5 pound per pound. This is a great opportunity for Zurdo to get his name established.
And for me, it's David Benavidez, because he's been chasing Canelo for as long as we can remember, and Canelo's not fighting this weekend. So if he goes and says, look, you didn't want to fight him, which is Zurdo, you didn't want to fight me, we're fighting each other, and guess what? I beat the bigger man. You know, we just saw Terrence Crawford do it against Canelo Alvarez, and very few people thought that he was going to be capable of doing what he did the way he did it. So if David Benavidez goes up and does the same thing against like a very competent champion in Zurdo Ramirez, then you really have to give David Benavidez his flowers and say, you know what, you are next. You are him.
Okay, and one last thing, because Oscar, I know you're kind of giving the fans a challenge, but what's your message to the fans?
Oh, just enjoy all the fights. Just go out there, have a good time, make it memorable. I think this weekend is all about the fighters. It's all about the sport. It's all about elevating what this weekend stands for. You know, it's a big old, you know, festival for the sport of boxing. And, you know, the fighters go up into the ring. They work hard. They risk their lives to give you guys a great show. And I believe that every single fighter, there's a reason why we made this whole card Mexico versus Mexico, because we know it's going to be a barn burner every single fight. So these fighters, you know, they give it their all, and I'm expecting fireworks every single fight. Fireworks from the opening bell to the last bell. So it's going to be exciting. This Cinco de Mayo, I think it's going to be the best one yet. I believe, I mean, I walk around, well, I don't walk around the arena or the hotel, but you can feel the energy. You can start to feel the energy. So it's better than last year's, and hopefully we can top it off every single year. This one's going to be the best one yet, so I can't wait for the next one. It's going to be exciting.
Oscar, we talked about Mexico against Mexican Americans, that big rivalry, you and Julio against Ruben Castillo, you know, Carvajal, Chiquita Gonzalez, Jose Luis Castillo against Diego Corrales. We both grew up in LA, and the Olympic Auditorium and the Forum was like the home base for Mexico versus Mexican Americans. I know my dad grew up talking to me about those fights. What are the fights that your dad grew up talking to you about, the Mexican Americans?
Julio Cesar Chavez, Azabache Martinez. That's the fight that made me fall in love with boxing as a little kid. Any Chavez fight, and the reason why any Chavez fight, because he literally had the cojones, the balls to really go out there and fight hard. Not that he had to, not that he had to because of the public pressure. It was just in his nature. It was who he was. So me as a young kid, as a young fighter, I wanted to be like that. That's why I became the fighter I was, because of this influence right here.
Tú eres su influencia para ser lo que es hoy.
Thank you.
Gracias, campeón.
Yeah, it's going to be fireworks. You guys heard it here first, Oscar and Julio. Thank you, gracias. So for more on the story of Oscar and Julio, check out La Guerra Civil on DAZN, an incredible film on their rivalry and a fitting watch as we head into Cinco de Mayo weekend. It's going down Saturday night. El Monstruo David Benavidez challenging Zurdo Ramirez. If you can't join us at T-Mobile Arena, be sure to purchase the PBC pay-per-view on Prime Video. Action begins at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And before the pay-per-view, we've got 3 exciting bouts in the PBC prelims on Prime Video. That starts at 2:30 p.m. Pacific, 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Then, of course, the big pay-per-view. We can't wait. Oscar and Julio, thank you guys so much for coming up here, taking the time. We appreciate y'all. And thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you guys Saturday night.
Thank you.
Chavez, one last face-off.